The first one I want to talk about happened in a town I won't name, somewhere off a state route in the eastern part of the country. I had been driving since about 2 in the afternoon and I pulled off around 11 at night because I was starting to drift. The kind of tired where you blink and the road has moved without you. I picked the motel because it had a vacancy sign that was actually lit, which felt like a small kindness at the time. The man at the front desk was older. He didn't say much. He asked if I wanted a room near the ice machine or away from it, and I said away from it, and he gave me a key on a green plastic tag with the number 11 on it. Not a card. An actual key. I remember thinking that was unusual, but not unusual enough to comment on. I paid in cash because I had cash, and he didn't ask for an ID, which I noticed but didn't think about. The room was at the end of the row. The light above my door was out. Every other door had a light. I told myself the bulb had probably just burned out and nobody had gotten to it yet. I unlocked the door, brought my bag in, and did the thing I always do when I check into a place alone, which is walk through the whole room with the lights on before I unpack anything. Bathroom, behind the curtain, under the bed, inside the closet. Everything was fine. The bed was made. There was a folded towel on the chair. The window had those vertical blinds, the cheap kind, and they were closed. I want to be honest about something. I didn't double check the lock right away. I locked the door, yes, but I didn't try the handle from the inside to make sure it had caught. I just heard it click and assumed. I was in the shower maybe 20 minutes later when I thought I heard the door. Not opening. Just, you know, the sound a door makes when it shifts in its frame. Like wind, or like somebody had leaned on it. I turned the water down to listen and I didn't hear anything else, so I finished and got out. I remember standing on the bath mat for a minute just listening. Nothing. The vent was running. The ice machine somewhere far off, despite what I'd asked for. I came out in the same clothes I'd driven in, because I hadn't unpacked yet, and that's when I noticed the towel on the chair was on the bed. Not thrown. Folded. The same fold. Just on the bed instead of the chair. I stood there for a long time. I tried to remember if I had moved it. I genuinely tried. I had walked through the room. I had set my bag down. I had pulled the chair out a little. Had I picked up the towel? Was the towel always on the bed and I was misremembering? That's the thing that I keep coming back to. I wasn't sure. And not being sure made me feel stupid, which made me less likely to do anything about it. I checked the door. It was locked. I checked the chain. The chain wasn't on, but I hadn't put it on, so that didn't tell me anything. I looked at the window. The blinds were still closed. I went into the bathroom and the bathroom window, which was small and frosted, was also closed and latched. I sat on the edge of the bed and I tried to think about it like an adult. The most likely explanation was that I had moved the towel and forgotten. The second most likely explanation was that housekeeping had left it on the bed and the chair towel was something I imagined. I had been driving for 9 hours. People misremember things. I slept that night with the lamp on and the chair pushed against the door. Nothing else happened. I left at 6 in the morning. The part one didn't think about until later, until I was already 2 states away, was that the man at the front desk. When he gave me the key, he said, 11, end of the row, lights out. He knew the light was out. Which is fine. That's a thing a person at a front desk would know. But he said it like he was telling me, not warning me. Like it was a feature of the room. I don't know what to do with that. I've stayed in plenty of motels since. But I checked the towel. The second one isn't mine. It's my sister's, and she's told it maybe twice, and the second time she told it she got quiet at the end and didn't want to talk about it anymore, which is how I know she actually believes what she's saying. She was traveling with a friend for a wedding. They drove down together and got in late, like 1 in the morning, and the place they had booked had given their room away. The man at the desk apologized and said he could put them in a different room, a double, 2 beds, no problem, same price. They were exhausted. They took it. The room was on the 2nd floor. She remembers that there was a vending machine on the walkway right outside their door, and that it hummed loud enough that they had to raise their voices to talk. Her friend fell asleep almost immediately. My sister couldn't, because of the hum, and because she's just like that in unfamiliar places. She lay there for maybe an hour. At some point she heard someone walk past their door. Which, in a motel, is not strange. People come and go. But the footsteps stopped. Right outside. She could hear them, and then she couldn't, but she didn't hear them continue. There was no door opening nearby. There was no key in a lock. Just the vending machine, and then quiet. She told me she lay there trying to decide if she was being paranoid. She said she counted to 60 in her head and told herself if she heard anything by the time she got to 60 she would wake her friend up. She got to 60. She heard nothing. She started over. She got to about 30 the second time and she heard the handle of their door move. Not turn. Just the metal of it shifting. Like someone had put their hand on it and was resting their weight there. She didn't move. She told me later she was embarrassed about how long she didn't move. She said she just lay there with her eyes open looking at the ceiling because she didn't want whoever it was to know she was awake. She was thinking, if I sit up, the bed will creak, and they'll know. Then she heard the handle move again, and then footsteps, going away, not in a hurry. In the morning she told her friend, and her friend said she had probably dreamed it, and she let herself believe that for about an hour. Then they went down to the lobby to check out, and the man at the desk, a different man, a younger one, asked them how their night was. And her friend, joking, said something like, "My friend thought somebody was trying to get in." And the man behind the desk didn't laugh. He just looked at them for a second and then he said, "Did you report it?" And her friend said, "No, we weren't sure." And he said, "You can report it if you want to. We've had some issues." That was the whole conversation. He didn't elaborate. They didn't ask. They paid and they left and they went to the wedding. The thing that bothers her, she told me, is not that someone tried the door. It's that the man at the desk wasn't surprised. It's that there was a procedure for it. It's that whatever had happened to her had happened before, to other people, in that same room or the room next to it, and the motel had decided that the appropriate response was a question at checkout. Did you report it? As if the burden of reporting it was on her, rather than the burden of doing something about it being on them. She doesn't stay in motels anymore. She'll drive an extra 2 hours to get to a hotel with an interior hallway. The third one is the one I think about the most, and I've gone back and forth on whether I should tell it at all, because I don't have a clean explanation for it and I don't want to make it sound like something it isn't. This was a work trip. I was traveling for a job I had at the time, and the company put me up in a motel because the conference hotel was full. It was a chain motel, the kind you've seen, 2 stories, exterior walkways, the office at one end with a vinyl banner that said something about free continental breakfast. I was there for 3 nights. The first night was normal. I unpacked properly, hung up my clothes, put my toiletries on the bathroom counter the way I do. I am, I'll admit, particular about where things go. I put my razor on the left side of the sink, my toothbrush on the right, in a little glass that the motel had provided. My phone charger was plugged in next to the bed on the side closest to the lamp. The second day I was out from about 8 in the morning until almost 10 at night. When I came back, the room had been cleaned. The bed was made. There was a new little card on the pillow about the breakfast hours. The towels had been replaced. Normal. I noticed that my razor and my toothbrush had been moved. The razor was on the right and the toothbrush was on the left. I assumed housekeeping had picked them up to clean the counter and put them back in the wrong spots. I switched them back. I didn't think about it again. The third day I left a note. I want to be clear about why. I didn't leave the note because I thought anything was wrong. I left the note because I was running low on shampoo and I wanted to ask if they could leave an extra one. I wrote it on a piece of motel stationery and I left it on the desk, weighted down with the TV remote so it wouldn't blow around when the door opened. I wrote, "Could I please get an extra shampoo? Thank you." And I signed my first name. I came back around 7 that night. The room had been cleaned. The shampoo was on the counter, 2 bottles, not 1. The note was gone. And on the desk, where my note had been, was a different piece of motel stationery. It said, in handwriting that wasn't mine, "You're welcome." And then my first name, with a comma after it, and then "sleep well." I want to tell you that I left immediately. I didn't. I sat on the bed and I read the note maybe 4 times. The handwriting was neat. The pen was blue. The paper was the same paper I had used. Everything about it was, on the surface, a polite response to a polite request. But I kept coming back to the comma. Sleep well, name. Or in this case, name, sleep well. It was the kind of thing you'd say to someone you knew. It was the kind of thing you'd say to someone you'd been thinking about. I took the note down to the office. The woman at the desk that night, she was maybe in her 50s, she had a cardigan on, she was watching something on her phone. I showed her the note and I asked who had cleaned my room. She looked at it and she said, "Oh, that's nice of them." And I said, "No, I'm asking who it was." And she said, "Well, it would have been whoever was on the schedule, let me check. She tapped on her computer for a while. Then she said, "That's strange. Nobody was scheduled for your room today. The cleaning rotation skipped your room because you had it cleaned yesterday and you'd only been there 2 nights." I asked her what she meant. She said, "We only clean every other day for stays under a week. Your room wasn't on the list." I asked her if she could check the key log. She said they didn't have one for the physical keys, only for the card readers, and my room had a physical key. I asked her if I could change rooms. She said all the other rooms were taken because of the conference. She offered to refund the night and I said no, because I had nowhere else to go, and it was already after 8, and I had a presentation the next morning at 9. I went back to the room. I put a chair against the door. I put my bag on the chair so it would fall if the chair moved. I slept maybe 2 hours, in stretches, with the bathroom light on. Nothing happened that night. I left at 6 in the morning and I drove to the conference and I gave my presentation and I drove home that afternoon instead of staying the 3rd night that the company had paid for. I never told the company. I never reported it. I didn't know what I would report. A polite note. A scheduling discrepancy. A feeling. What bothers me, still, is that whoever wrote that note had been in my room when they weren't supposed to be. They had gone through my things enough to know my name, because I hadn't put my name on the note, I had put my first name only, and the note back used my first name only, which means either they were just matching what I wrote, or they already knew. I keep going back and forth on which is worse. If they were matching me, they were being careful. If they already knew, they had looked. And the shampoo. The shampoo is the thing nobody else thinks is strange when I tell this story, but it's the thing I think about the most. They brought me 2 bottles. I asked for 1 extra, which means 1 in total, or 1 in addition. Either way, the answer is 1 or 2. They brought 2. They brought more than I asked for, which means somebody made a decision, on my behalf, about what I might need. Somebody was thinking about what I might want. I've stayed in motels since then. I have to, for work, sometimes. I do the things you'd expect. I check the locks. I check under the bed. I put a chair against the door even though I know it doesn't really do anything. I keep my toiletries in the bag instead of on the counter. I don't write notes anymore. The part one haven't figured out how to explain is that, for about 6 months after that trip, I would get a feeling, at home, in my own apartment, that someone had been in my space. Nothing was ever moved. Nothing was ever taken. It was just a feeling. I would come home from work and stand in the doorway and feel like the air in the room had been disturbed. I know how that sounds. I know there's nothing to it. I had my locks changed anyway. It didn't help. I think what that motel did to me, whoever it was, whatever it was, is that it taught me that a locked door is a suggestion. That's the part that doesn't go away. Once you learn that, you can't unlearn it. You carry it into every room you sleep in for the rest of your life. That's all 3. I don't have a tidy way to end this. I don't think any of them have endings, really. They're just things that happened, and then the next day happened, and you keep going. But you check the towel. You listen for the footsteps. You notice when the light above your door is out, and you think about whether the man at the desk mentioned it as a warning or as a feature. The 4th one happened to a coworker of mine, and I'm telling it because he told it to me in a way that felt like he had been waiting to tell somebody. We were on a long drive together for a job site visit, and he just started talking about it, the way people do when the road is quiet and they've been thinking about something for a long time. He had been on a fishing trip with his brother. They had driven up to a lake region, the kind of area where the motels are not really motels so much as a row of cabins with a shared office. They had booked 2 separate units because his brother snores, and they had learned, over many trips, that sharing a room ended badly. The units were small. 1 room, 1 bed, a bathroom, a little kitchenette with a microwave and a coffee maker. They were next door to each other. He told me that the first thing he noticed, when he walked into his unit, was that the coffee maker was warm. Not on. Not brewing. Just warm to the touch, like it had been used recently and unplugged. He thought maybe housekeeping had made themselves a cup, which would be unusual but not impossible. He didn't say anything. He plugged it in and made his own coffee and didn't think about it for the rest of the evening. They fished that day, came back late, ate dinner from a gas station, watched some television in his brother's unit, and went to bed around 11. He said he slept hard. He was tired from the drive and from being out on the water. He woke up at some point in the night because he heard the microwave beep. The little beep it makes when somebody presses a button. He lay there for a while trying to decide if he had dreamed it. He hadn't set the microwave. He hadn't used it at all. He looked over at it, and the display was lit up, and there were numbers on it. 30 seconds. Counting down. He told me he didn't move. He just watched the numbers count down. 29. 28. He said he couldn't see the rest of the kitchenette from the bed because of the angle, but he could see the microwave display, and the numbers kept going. When it got to 0, the microwave beeped 3 times, the way they do when something is finished, and then the light inside it turned off. He still didn't move. He waited. He listened for footsteps, for breathing, for anything. He heard the refrigerator hum. He heard the heat kick on. He didn't hear a person. After what he estimates was about 20 minutes, he got out of bed. He turned on the lamp. The kitchenette was empty. The microwave was closed. There was nothing inside it. He opened it just to check. Empty. Clean. The same as when he had checked in. He went next door and knocked on his brother's unit. His brother answered, half asleep, annoyed. He asked his brother if he had come into his room for any reason. His brother said no. He asked if his brother had a key to his unit. His brother said no, the office had only given them their own keys. He didn't sleep the rest of that night. He sat in the chair by the window with the lamp on and waited for it to get light outside. In the morning he went to the office. He told the woman there what had happened. He said he tried to say it in a way that didn't sound crazy. He said something like, "I think somebody might have been in my unit last night. Is there any chance somebody on staff would have a reason to come in?" The woman looked at him and said, "No, we don't enter rooms while they're occupied." He asked if anyone else had a key to his unit. She said the keys were all accounted for. She asked if anything was taken. He said no. She asked if anything was damaged. He said no. She kind of shrugged in a way that wasn't unkind but wasn't helpful either, and she said, "Well, if you're worried, we can move you to a different unit." He didn't move units. He and his brother left a day early. They didn't ask for a refund. They just left. The part he told me, the part that made him stop talking for a while in the car, was that 2 months later he got a credit card statement, and there was a small charge on it from a town he had never been to, for an amount that didn't match anything he had bought. $11 and something. He called the card company and they refunded it and they issued him a new card and he forgot about it. A year later, his brother mentioned, sort of in passing, that he had been having trouble with his cards too. Small charges. Refunded easily. Different towns. He asked his brother when it had started. His brother had to think about it. He said, "You know what, it was right after that fishing trip. The one where you thought somebody was in your room." He told me they don't fish at that lake anymore. They go somewhere else now. He said he doesn't know if the two things are related. He said probably not. He said it's the kind of thing where if you connect the dots, you sound paranoid, and if you don't connect them, you feel stupid. He said the microwave is the thing he can't explain. The cards, maybe. Things happen. Numbers get stolen. But the microwave was something somebody did on purpose, in his room, while he was sleeping. And he never figured out why. The fifth one I'm going to tell more carefully because the person it happened to asked me not to share certain details, and I want to respect that, so some of what I'm going to say will be vague in places where the specifics would identify her. She was traveling alone for personal reasons. She had picked the motel based on price, not on reviews, which she now says was a mistake she keeps coming back to. It was a one-story motel off a highway, the kind with a parking spot directly in front of each door, and she had pulled in around dinner time. She was planning to stay 2 nights. When she checked in, the man at the desk asked for her car's license plate. She gave it to him. She said this was normal at every motel she'd ever stayed at and she didn't think about it. He gave her a room toward the middle of the row. She remembers that he looked at her, and then looked at her car through the window of the office, and then looked at her again, and asked her if she was traveling with anyone. She said no, just me. He nodded and gave her the key. She unloaded her bag. She went to a diner across the road for dinner. She came back maybe an hour and a half later. The light in her room was on. She was sure she had turned it off. She stood in the parking lot for a long time looking at the window. The curtains were closed, but she could see the warm light behind them. She told me she did something that she now thinks was stupid, but at the time made sense. She walked up to the door and she listened. She put her ear against the door and she listened for about a minute. She didn't hear anything. She unlocked the door and pushed it open and stood in the doorway without going in. The room looked exactly as she had left it, except the lamp by the bed was on. Her suitcase was where she had left it on the luggage rack. The bathroom door was open the same amount it had been. Nothing was missing that she could see. She went in. She checked the bathroom. Empty. She checked the closet. Empty. She checked under the bed. Empty. She locked the door behind her. She put the chain on. She sat on the bed for a long time. She told herself that she had probably left the lamp on. People do that. You think you turn things off, and you don't. She got ready for bed. She told herself she was going to sleep, and in the morning everything would feel less strange. She was in bed maybe 30 minutes when she heard a car pull into the spot in front of her room. Not the spot to the left or the right. The spot directly in front of her door. She heard the engine cut off. She heard a car door open and close. She waited for the sound of a door unlocking at the room next to hers, or the room across the way. She didn't hear it. She heard footsteps on the concrete walkway outside, and then she heard them stop, and she knew, from the location of the sound, that they had stopped in front of her door. She didn't move. She had the chain on. She had the deadbolt on. She told herself those things were enough. Whoever it was stood outside her door for a long time. She doesn't know how long. She said it felt like 10 minutes but was probably less. She could hear them breathing if she held her own breath. She could hear the fabric of whatever they were wearing shift when they moved. Then they walked away. She heard them get back in the car. The car didn't start right away. It sat there for another long stretch with the person inside it. Then the engine turned on, and the car backed out, and it drove away. She called the front desk. The same man answered. She told him what had happened. She said, "Somebody just stood outside my door for a long time and then left." The man said, "We have people coming and going all night. It's a motel." She said, "No, this person came specifically to my door." The man was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Do you want me to come check on the room?" She told me she said no, because the idea of him coming to her room in the middle of the night, the same man who had asked her if she was traveling alone, was somehow worse than what had just happened. She said she would be fine. She hung up. She didn't sleep. She packed her things in the dark. She waited until the sky started to get grey, around 5 in the morning, and then she carried her bag to her car and she left. She didn't check out. She didn't ask for a refund for the second night. She just drove. About 40 minutes down the road, she stopped at a gas station and she sat in the parking lot and she cried for a while. Then she kept driving. The thing she said to me, when she told me this story, was that she has no proof of anything. Nobody touched her. Nobody got into her room. Nobody threatened her in any direct way. If she tried to report it, there would be nothing to report. A man asked her a normal question at check-in. A light was on that she might have left on. A car parked in front of her door, which is what parking spots are for. A person stood outside, which they have a right to do. None of it, individually, was a crime. But she said she knew. She said she knew the way you know when somebody is following you in a parking lot, even before you've turned around to check. She said the body figures it out before the mind does, and the mind spends the rest of the night trying to argue with the body, and the body is always right. She doesn't travel alone anymore. Not because she's afraid of being attacked. She said it's not that. She said it's because she doesn't want to spend another night arguing with herself about whether what she's feeling is real. The sixth one is the shortest and the one I think about when I can't sleep, which is not often, but it happens. I had been driving across the country for a move. New job, new city, all of that. I was doing it in stretches of about 6 or 7 hours a day because I didn't want to push myself. On the third night, I stopped at a motel that was attached to a truck stop. The kind where the parking lot is mostly semis, and the motel is sort of an afterthought building off to the side. I checked in. The room was on the ground floor, at the back, facing a field. There were no other guests on that side of the building that I could see. All the cars were parked on the other side, near the truck stop. I went to sleep around midnight. I'm a heavy sleeper when I'm tired, and I had been driving all day, so I went out fast. I woke up around 3 in the morning because I needed water. I keep a bottle by the bed when I travel and I had forgotten to fill it. I got up and I walked to the bathroom in the dark because I knew the layout of the room and I didn't want to wake myself up all the way by turning on the light. I filled the bottle from the tap and I turned around to walk back to the bed and there was somebody sitting in the chair by the window. I want to tell you that I screamed, or that I ran, or that I did any of the things you would expect a person to do. I didn't. I froze. I stood in the bathroom doorway with the water running behind me and I looked at the chair. The person in the chair didn't move. They were just sitting there. I couldn't see their face because the only light in the room was the little green light from the smoke detector on the ceiling, and it was behind them. I could see the outline of a head and shoulders, and what looked like hands resting on the arms of the chair. I stood there for what I think was maybe 30 seconds. I'm not sure. Time did something strange. I remember thinking, very clearly, that if I moved, they would move. So I didn't move. I turned the bathroom light on. The chair was empty. There was nobody in the room. I checked. I checked under the bed, in the closet, in the bathroom, behind the curtain. The door was locked. The chain was on. The window was closed and latched. I checked all of it twice. I sat on the bed with all the lights on for the rest of the night. Here's the part one want to be careful about. I don't believe in ghosts. I never have. I think what most likely happened is that I was half asleep, and my brain made a shape out of the chair and the shadows, and when I turned the light on, the shape went away because there was nothing there to begin with. That is the explanation I have decided to believe. It is the only explanation that lets me keep staying in motels. But there is a smaller, quieter part of me that remembers that the chair had a jacket on it when I went to bed. My jacket. I had hung it over the back of the chair. And in the morning, when I was packing up, the jacket was on the floor next to the chair, neatly, like it had been moved, not fallen. I picked it up. I put it in my bag. I checked out. I drove the rest of the way to my new city, and I started my new job, and I never went back to that motel, and I never will. I don't know what I saw. I know what I think I saw. I know what I want to believe I didn't see. Those are three different things, and I have learned, in the years since, to stop trying to make them agree. The thing about motels, the thing I've come to understand, is that you are never really alone in one. There are too many keys. There are too many people who have been in that room before you. The walls remember things. The furniture has been sat in by strangers. Whatever happened in that room before you got there is still in the room with you, in some small way, and you sleep on top of it, and you leave in the morning, and the next person comes in and sleeps on top of you. I don't have a tidy ending for this one either. I'm sorry. I don't think any of these stories end. I think they just stop, at some point, and you carry them with you, and you check the chair before you go to sleep, and you tell yourself you're being silly, and you check it anyway.